It's a moment. A single, compressed point in time where everything that is supposed to happen stops. The noise of 20,000 people, the feedback from the speakers, the storyline that's been building for weeks, it all just freezes. This was that moment. The crowd went silent, and then erupted in disbelief. After months of rumors, denials, and grainy fan videos of sightings, she's finally back. Live on SmackDown. And what happened next? No one in the arena, no one watching at home, and certainly not the champion in the ring, saw this coming. This wasn't just a return. This was a reckoning. The night was proceeding exactly as planned. The champion, Vex, was in the middle of her usual monologue. She was arrogant, sharp, and seemingly unbeatable. The championship belt, the one that defined the entire division, rested on her shoulder like it was forged there. She was mocking the crowd, mocking her non-existent competition, and settling into the comfortable cadence of dominance. The audience booed on cue. The commentators read their rehearsed lines. It was just another Friday night. And then, static. Not loud, just a scratch. A single audible pop over the arena speakers. Vex paused, annoyed at the technical glitch. She tapped the microphone. "What? Can't afford to keep the lights on?" she sneered. The crowd laughed lightly. She went to raise the mic again, but before she could speak, the arena lights, all of them, snapped off. A total, suffocating blackout. The crowd's light booing turned into a confused murmur. This wasn't part of the show. The hard cam light was off. The Titantron was dead. For 3 full seconds, the only sound was the shuffling of feet and a few nervous coughs. The world's biggest wrestling promotion had, for a moment, simply stopped. And in that manufactured darkness, something impossible was about to happen. It started not with music, but with a sound. A single piano note, high and mournful. It was a note every longtime fan knew by heart. It was the opening chord to her theme. A collective gasp, a sound like the wind being sucked out of the building, replaced the murmuring. You could hear individual voices shouting, "No!" and "It can't be." The Titantron flickered to life, not with a video but with one word, typed in a simple, elegant font. Eliza. The arena didn't cheer. It detonated. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated shock. This wasn't the return of a beloved legend. This was the return of a ghost. Eliza, the one whose career had been stolen by injury at the absolute pinnacle of her greatness. The one who had given a tearful retirement speech in this very ring 4 years prior. The rumors were always there, but they were fantasy. Yet, there she was. The lights slowly rose, not in a blaze but in a soft, ethereal white, revealing her standing on the entrance ramp. She wasn't in wrestling gear. She was just there. And the 20,000 people in attendance were losing their collective minds. Eliza didn't move. She just stood there, letting the wall of noise wash over her. It was a mix of cheers, screams, and visible, audible crying from fans in the front row. In the ring, Vex's mask of arrogance had completely shattered. Her jaw was slack. She looked from Eliza to the championship belt, to the referee, her confusion quickly hardening into a new emotion. Rage. This was her show, her ring. Eliza finally took a step, then another. The walk from the ramp to the ring is only about 30 yards, but this felt like a mile. She wasn't acknowledging the crowd. Her eyes were fixed, not on Vex, but on the championship belt resting on the mat. The commentators, usually so boisterous, were speaking in hushed, reverent tones. They had no script. They had no data. They were just fans, watching the impossible. "I don't believe what I'm seeing," one whispered. This changes everything." Vex began to shout, "Get out of here! You don't work here anymore. This is my time." But her voice was lost, drowned out by the roar of history coming back to life. Eliza reached the ring, stepped through the ropes, and finally, stood face to face with the woman who had replaced her. The air was so thick you could feel the pressure. Vex was vibrating with anger, demanding Eliza speak, demanding she explain herself. The crowd started a "Welcome back" chant, but it died quickly, replaced by a tense, heavy silence. Everyone was waiting for the promo. They were waiting for the challenge, for the setup to the big pay-per-view match. A referee slid a microphone into the ring. Eliza, never breaking eye contact with the championship belt, slowly bent down and picked up the mic. She raised it to her lips. The arena was so quiet you could hear the hum of the amplifiers. She opened her mouth, and then, with a look of almost dismissive calm, she let the microphone fall from her hand. It hit the mat with a loud, percussive thud that echoed through the building. Vex recoiled, stunned. The crowd let out a confused, angry boo. But Eliza wasn't finished. She took one step past Vex, ignoring her completely. She knelt down. She slowly reached for the championship belt. Vex screamed, "Don't you touch that!" But she was too slow. Eliza picked up the title. The statement wasn't verbal. It was physical. She didn't come back to talk. She came back for that. She held the gold. 4 years of pain, of physical therapy, of watching someone else live her life. It all culminated in this. She ran her thumb over the center plate. Vex was a statue of pure fury, paralyzed, unsure whether to attack or to wait. The script was gone. This was uncharted territory. And then Eliza did the last thing anyone expected. She smiled. It wasn't a smirk. It wasn't a challenge. It was a sad, knowing, peaceful smile. She looked at the title, then looked up, not at Vex, but at the rafters, at the memory of her past self. She gently, almost respectfully, placed the championship back on the mat. She didn't throw it. She placed it. Then she turned, slid out of the ring, and walked back up the ramp, never once looking back. Vex was left alone in the ring. Holding a microphone Eliza had dropped, her championship at her feet, utterly and completely humiliated without a single punch being thrown. The crowd was silent again, not from shock, but from profound confusion. What was that? What did it mean? As Eliza disappeared behind the curtain, the show abruptly cut to a commercial. The screen went black, and the internet exploded. The second the broadcast cut to black, the backstage area descended into madness. Producers were screaming into headsets. Who cleared that? Was that cleared? Get a camera on her now. But Eliza was gone. She had walked past the gorilla position, past the stunned faces of her former colleagues, and straight out a side door into a waiting car. She hadn't spoken to anyone. She hadn't checked in with management. She had simply appeared, held the title, and left. The other wrestlers who had been glued to the monitors were now in a heated debate. "That was disrespectful," said one. "That was genius," said another. "She just made herself the biggest star in the company. Again." Vex, meanwhile, had stormed back through the curtain, throwing her championship belt at the feet of the head writer. She was screaming, veins popping in her neck, demanding someone be fired. But the authority figures were quiet. They weren't looking at Vex. They were looking at the social media analytics on a laptop. The numbers were astronomical. The return, the non-attack, the mystery. It was the biggest buzz the company had generated in a decade. The script was in flames, but they were about to make a fortune from the ashes. The next 24 hours were a blur of digital chaos. The clip of Eliza holding the belt wasn't just a clip, it was a cultural event. News outlets that didn't even cover wrestling were running the story. Was it a shoot? Was it a brilliant work? The debate raged. Pundits released emergency podcasts, dissecting every frame. They analyzed the way she held the belt, the sadness in her smile, the disrespect of the mic drop. They argued it was a betrayal of Vex. They argued it was the most compelling character work in history. The company, wisely, said nothing. Their social media channels just posted a single high-resolution photo of Eliza holding the title. with no caption. It became the most liked post in their history. Vex, in a moment of poor judgment, posted a furious, rambling, typo-filled rant on her personal account about part-timers and unprofessionalism, which was screenshotted by thousands before her agent forced her to delete it. It only added fuel to the fire. Eliza, meanwhile, remained a ghost. Her social media was silent. She had lit the match, dropped it on the world, and simply walked away to watch it burn from a distance. To understand the eruption, you have to understand the wound. This wasn't just about a surprise return. It was about a story that was never finished. We pull up the old footage. Eliza, 4 years ago, in this same ring. She's not a warrior. She's a young woman in tears, forced to relinquish the championship she had just won, all because of a neck injury. Her goodbye speech was heartbreaking. It was a promise to the fans that she would be back, a promise that doctors told her she could never keep. For 4 years, that title, her title, had been held by others. Vex wasn't just a champion. She was the symbol of the era that had replaced Eliza. She was the one living the life Eliza was supposed to have. When Eliza returned, she wasn't just confronting Vex. She was confronting her own past. She was confronting fate. The mic drop wasn't arrogance. It was a statement that words were insufficient. Holding that belt wasn't a challenge. It was a question. Can I still do this? Do I still want this? The weight of her legacy was in that moment, and every single fan felt it. The true fallout wasn't on television or social media. It was in the locker room. The entire women's division was fractured. On one side, you had the younger talent, the ones who had come up in the Vex era. They were furious. They saw Eliza's return as a stunt, an Attitude Era legend jumping the line, stealing the spotlight that they had worked so hard to build. They felt Vex had been disrespected, that their collective work had been dismissed. On the other side were the veterans, the women who had been in the ring with Eliza. They were quiet. They understood the sacrifice. They knew what that injury had cost her, and they felt she had earned the right to come back however she chose. In the center of this storm was Vex. The champion, once the undeniable leader of the locker room, was now an island. She was paranoid, angry, and isolated. Eliza, with one 10-minute appearance, hadn't just returned. She had destabilized the entire foundation of the division. She had exposed the fragile alliances and the hidden jealousies. The real conflict wasn't going to be in the ring. It was going to be backstage. The world waited for the next move. They waited for the challenge, for the contract signing, for the inevitable main event match. But it never came. Weeks went by. Eliza was not on the next show, or the one after that. Vex's rage simmered into confusion. Finally, the company released a pre-taped interview. It was just Eliza, sitting in an empty arena, no makeup, no costume. She looked calm. She said the rumors were true. She had been medically cleared for one more match. But she had a secret. She wasn't sure if she wanted it. The fire that had driven her was now just warm. She explained she came back that night, unannounced, to find out. She needed to stand in that ring, hold that title, and look her replacement in the eye to see if the monster was still there. And in that moment, holding the gold, she said she didn't feel rage or ambition. She just felt finished. She had smiled because she realized it wasn't hers anymore. She had put the belt down and walked away. The return everyone lost their minds over, that was the end. It wasn't a comeback. It was closure. She didn't come back to reclaim her throne. She came back to abdicate it on her own terms.